By December of 2015, the dollar flu had made its way into Washington DC, and it hit hard. Within days, the once bustling suburban areas of the US capital turned into a derelict and dangerous urban jungle. For most people, looting became a requirement of survival, with shops and pharmacies being the main targets. Those who were prepared with supplies locked themselves in their homes and tried to hold off until help arrived. Some DC communities made more communal efforts. People banded together in settlements, built fortified walls, and shared resources and supplies. In the early days of the DC outbreak, many settlements started to pop up, including CERA-created refugee camps for tourists. It became an unofficial network of barter and shared security. However, by February, with the rise of organised gangs and other hostile factions raiding and carving out territories in the city, it quickly began to pull apart the smaller settlements. Eventually only 3 of the largest settlements remained: the castle, the campus, and the theatre. After the original smallpox outbreak in December, CERA established one of its very first refugee camps in the Smithsonian Castle in the National Mall. This camp housed out-of-towners who were stranded in southern DC. Over time, the castle was transformed into DC's very first settlement, as it contained ample resources, medical services, and it had an organised and effective defence system in place. Despite heavy rioting and looting to the north, the castle remained a safe and secure shelter for its occupants. However, as winter turned into spring, attacks on the settlement grew more frequent, and a new faction of ex-JTF called the True Sons moved into the area and expanded west towards Moore. By April, the castle was essentially surrounded by the True Sons' territory and was completely cut off from the JTF base of operations in the White House. The True Sons allowed the castle to exist if they continued to supply the resources to their troops. But in June, negotiations fell through, and the True Sons launched a DC-62 chemical attack on the castle settlement, killing most of its residents in a matter of minutes. To this day, the settlement remains uninhabitable due to the toxic chemical residue that has been left behind. In December, CERA established a refugee centre in the large open field on the campus of the George Washington University, just west of the White House. For more than a month, the camp focused on providing patient treatment, housing tourists trapped in the city, and keeping the social unrest to a minimum. But as winter dragged on, refugee camps around the city began to fall. Overrun with smallpox cases and armed thugs raiding their supplies, CERA began pulling healthcare workers out of the more dangerous camps. By February, the university camp, now called the campus, was the only functioning refugee centre that remained. Recognising that both CERA and the JTF were stretched by the pandemic and were considering total withdrawal from the field, campus citizens began to take steps in order to become self-sufficient and a long-term sustaining community. Firstly, they built defences to use against hyena raiders who were continuously raiding the camp. Next, using the green spaces around the campus, they began to plant and cultivate food crops. Finally, the residents elected a leader, named Henry Hayes, to oversee the restructuring of the camp into a fortified and self-sustaining settlement. Hayes is organised and methodical and excelled at keeping the camp operational and secure. However, when it came to the happiness of the people under his leadership, he struggled to see its importance. Under his direction, sacrifice was expected from all, and personal leisure was viewed as unnecessary and even with hostility. The settlement was a thriving but cheerless place, with every waking moment devoted to procuring food and water and maintaining the shelter and security. Life settled into a hive-like routine, work and sleep. Anything that distracted the settlers from this goal was deemed as unacceptable. This led to resentment within the community. Outside influences started to infiltrate the camp, and factions such as the outcasts and their ideas started to become more and more attractive to the residents. The month of April brought some relief from the cold weather, but also a new threat from the west. Raiders calling themselves the Outcasts began a series of hit-and-run strikes on the settlement, and started harassing campus foraging teams who were venturing out of the camp looking for supplies. But far worse, the outcast philosophy was becoming popular and alluring to the residents within the camp, and a number of prominent residents became converts, one of which was Henry Hay's own wife, who eventually left the campus and joined the outcasts. After this, trust in Hay's leadership came under scrutiny from the residents, and he was asked to step down. However, he refused to do so, and only burrowed himself deeper into his methods of running the compound. This in turn further promoting more people to leave the settlement and join the outcasts. And by June, the outcasts had gained full control of the area and had completely surrounded the campus. The last major settlement in DC to survive the growing hostile presence was established in Ford's Theatre. The theatre began filling up in March. Citizens in the area sought refuge from the increasing gang attacks from the Hyena faction. This settlement's leader is former division agent Odessa Sawyer. Sawyer was born and raised in DC, so she has a good sense of local awareness. She is a tough operative and field commander who wears a prosthetic leg after being wounded in combat during her SHD activation in DC. Sawyer's husband was murdered shortly after she began active duty, and as a result, she struggles with dark impulses, including severe anger and PTSD. The theatre had a difficult start, as it was built during constant attacks from the hyenas, and with multiple security threats and other setbacks. This affected, and continues to affect, its people's morale. Although the settlement is well organised under Sawyer's command, there is still a feeling of anger and dread by everyone within the encampment. Settlers are exhausted and are suffering from a growing sense of hopelessness, only made worse by the growing hyena presence around the camp. Residents have selected a core council headed by Sawyer to keep things running, but there is a severe lack of community. Problems like graffiti, vandalism, theft, and even substance abuse continues to be a complication. Although protected for now, inhabitants are isolated, and access to outside resources is only getting more difficult as time goes on. Thanks for watching. Before I go, I really need to do the stereotypical call out of my social media in hopes that they'll start to grow and people will stop making fun of me for how pathetic and irrelevant they are. Check out the description for my Twitter, Discord, Instagram, and a bunch of other things that apparently I'm supposed to have. Yeah. Cheers!